This week, we're talking about church culture shifts, specifically around building a church culture that makes disciples that make disciples. With us today is Tim Bushfield, Senior Pastor of Community Church of East Gloucester. I'm Gina Mueller, Disciple-Making Catalyst for Vision New England, and your host today for The Church in Action. Tim, hey, my friend. Thanks for being with us today. Hey, Canadian coming out strong this morning. Do a little introduction to get us going. Tell us more about who you are, your fam, where you live, what you do.
Sure. My name's Tim. I am a pastor. Canadian. My wife and I both came down here in the year 2000 just to do a quick 3-year MDiv in 2 years and get back to Canada. And that was 25 years ago. Found a little church in East Gloucester, Massachusetts that allowed us to wade in and to help in a season of transition. And the leadership of the church was very, very gracious in allowing some young seminary punks to try their hand at ministry. And we kind of fell in love with the community and the people and sensed the Lord saying, this is where I have you. So this is where we've been. So the church is 150, some 160, I don't know, 1863 is when the church was founded. It's been through seasons of up and down. And when I got here, there were like 20 people. And no pastor. And then we got to sort of tag along while the Spirit did some pretty fun things and bring it to as high as 300 or 400, as low as 70 or 80 over the years. I've been here long enough to see the ebbs and flows of the excitement of life as a church in New England.
That's great. Yeah, love that. Tell us a bit more about who is there. Who has Jesus called you to reach? Tell us more, too, about the context of Gloucester.
I mean, I can try. The people that we're called to reach are whoever's here. I would love to say I have this like clear vision of the demographic that I'm targeting, and I've got a Saddleback Sam or something like that I don't. We really just fell in love with the people that God had already brought here. And then we've just stayed as he's been faithful to call others into community with us. So as much as I'd love to float Gloucester as this like really unique context, that's like, it's a city. It's a city like so many others in New England. It's filled with people of all shapes and sizes. We don't have a lot of racial diversity in one sense, but we've got a lot of socioeconomic diversity. You know, being on the coast, we have the mansions on the coast and the more central downtown locations where there's less affluence. We did a couple of years ago welcome a Brazilian Portuguese congregation to share our facility with us. That's more of our racial diversity that we have here, but all ages, all walks of life, all backgrounds, lots of different denominations represented in our church as a non-denominational church. Mm-hmm. Regular people that you'll find in cities across New England, I think.
You have thought deeply about church culture and really have been setting things in motion for many years. Can you describe to me the kind of church that you want to lead? So what are some of the foundational assumptions or key values, elements that are really important to you as you think about leading a church that makes and multiplies disciples?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think jokingly, I say that my number one job is to work myself out of a job.
Yeah.
That church isn't about me or the staff team or the leadership team, but our job philosophically, we want to equip people to take responsibility for their relationship with Jesus for themselves so that they can live out their faith. And if that happens to be volunteering or being a part of this church, or if it's out in the city, or if it's some other organization, we want people to figure out a way to tune into what the Lord's doing in their lives and jump in on that. And so we're very decentralized as a church in terms of, we want to equip people to get out into the world and follow Jesus. And we gather them in a community church to try and do that equipping and celebrating and encouragement and challenge. But it's not about what we're doing as a church per se, although we are doing things as a church. It's more about really empowering people towards agency for their own relationships with Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I were to repeat back to you some of the key things that I heard you say, I heard you talk about empowerment, that's really important. I heard you talk about equipping. And I heard you use language like helping people take responsibility for their life with God. And so everything that you do, every group or gathering or whatever, that's the posture or the goal is to really equip and send people or to help them take responsibility for their own life with God. What is different for you as the leader in that? Like, what's different about leading a church where everything you do is really trying to equip people versus being the expert at the center? If I was to use, I don't know, harsh language. You have to keep getting yourself out of the center. What's different for you?
Yeah. I mean, I will just put the disclaimer in there that that's also aspirationally what we're aiming for, that we don't always succeed in accomplishing that goal of, equipping.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to do things yourself. Like just to be like, I'm just going to take care of that. It's 10 times more work to equip and train and raise up and lead, and things don't get done. And then so one of the things is you've got to be more patient. You've got to just be like, it's okay if that doesn't happen this season, because it's more important that we're actually equipping people and growing people into these roles and into their gifts than it is that we accomplish any of the things that we're aiming for.
Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things is that you've got to be okay with now, if my church is watching this, please, community church, don't feel like I'm slamming on you here, but you've got to be okay with a lower quality level overall, because you're putting people who are growing and learning into positions of visibility and using their gifts. So it might be a younger or a newer worship leader who isn't quite as confident or who doesn't quite lead with the kind of experience that somebody who's been doing it for 15 or 20 years would do it. Yeah. It's about allowing other people that you've identified as having the gift of teaching and preaching to get behind the pulpit and to try out what that's like to preach. And that might always not be the best product we could put forward.
Yeah.
But even the language of product makes me want to throw up in my mouth. So that it's about equipping people to use their gifts to edify the body and build the kingdom. And if you're going to let people grow, that means you're going to have awkward church services. You're going to have people involved in the community making mistakes. You're going to have people trying things and finding out that's not actually for me. And that journey doesn't always look bright and shiny and doesn't market particularly well. And it's very much a deprofessionalization of ministry, that we don't want the experts doing the things. We want our staff team to be experts at equipping other people to figure out what their gifts are. That's the expertise we're looking for, even as we hire staff.
If I was to put some language to that, or like describe that value, I would say what it sounds like you're saying is that your value is development over delivery.
Nice alliteration. Yes.
And what you just said, I think, is really powerful, that the core kind of requirement for your staff team is not just that they're really good at their jobs of leading the different church things, but they're actually able to raise up people to teach other people to do what they do.
That's the win for us. That's totally the win.
Yeah.
Our most recent hire, who shall remain nameless, we hired her because we asked, write your own job description. What would you like to do? And she said, I want to go for long walks on the beach with people and talk about their life with Jesus. I was like, let's go. How can we get you doing that as close to full-time as possible?
Yeah. There's a rub for us, and I would imagine that there's some rub for those that are listening in on like how willing truly, there's some like reflection questions. How willing truly are we to let things not be as great as we could produce them to be? Because I get the privilege of, I know your team and I know their capacity and their capability, and they could pull off beautiful, shiny delivery kind of church almost effortlessly overnight. they have the capacity to be able to do that. And yet there's a conscious choice that you guys are making week in and week out, to choose development of people over delivery of a, dare I say, a production. And I'm not trying to be weird about that. All of those words, are tricky when we're talking about church, but it's a conscious choice that you're continuously making week in and week out, to choose development over delivery. And my observation is working with leaders who are trying to do similar things. And I would say what you're describing isn't necessarily prescriptive, right? The way that plays out in different church contexts needs to look different. But the kind of the value behind it of development of people is a higher value than delivery of a pristine, kind of well-polished sort of production.
Well-polished we are not.
Yeah. Okay. So, but my observation though, is that there's a gravitational or like a magnetic pull towards expert church, whatever. And if we're not careful, we as leaders can really play into that. We can like that. We can like being the expert at the center. We can like being, we may not admit it, but we can like being the one who has the seminary education and people need to come to us to get fed and all of those things. What is it like for you as a leader to constantly have to push back against that? That
was a lot harder earlier on when, you're figuring out your identity as a pastor and what it means to lead a congregation of people. And yes, everybody loves or feels the need to be needed and you want to be in the middle of everything. I also, like most pastors, burn out by trying to be all things to all people and be in the center. And so part of that journey is just, I've been here at this church 25 years in the lead role for 20. And over those years, learning the lessons, it's just about limit. I can't be in the middle of everything. And so when I try, my family gets the short end of the stick, my people get the short end of the stick. Turns out we're created. We have limits, and a scalable model, decentralized, equipping the people to care for one another is far more scalable and far more, and honestly, far more effective. I mean, I'm one person with one set of perspectives and one set of life experiences, and to have, first of all, a staff team around me who are very different from me and have different gifts. And so somebody saying, I'm in crisis, I need pastoral care. It's like, well, which one of us is best suited for that? It's not always going to be me, praise the Lord. But much less if you're in small groups throughout the church and now you've got small group leaders and a community that can surround you. Maybe there's 8 or 10 people that it takes to actually care for one person. And then, so the whole premise is cynically, it's survival based. It's like, it can't all go through me. I learned that. So is there a healthy way to build a church around some of these principles that sees us equipping the church to care for one another, using their gifts, encouraging that? So, I mean, one of the metaphors we talk about at the church here quite a bit is that our job as leaders is to create a greenhouse. It's not to do the growing, but it's to create the environments in which growth can happen. We want the temperature right, the humidity right. We want to make sure the nutrients are present. So we're going to create a place where people are going to be taught what the Bible says. They're going to be encouraged. And here's some tools you can use to grow closer to Jesus. We're going to create some structures, whether that's small groups or one-on-ones or ministry teams. But in all those things, that's just like the substrate upon which they can build their relationship with God. And so we're greenhouse builders, but it comes down to people taking responsibility for saying, okay, then I'm going to choose to grow and engage, and I'm going to try things.
Yeah. One of the ways that that's played out, you mentioned this earlier, that as people are becoming disciples who then are learning to be disciple makers, sometimes that's inside the church, sometimes that's embedded in their community and going to find people in their lives that don't know Jesus yet and meaningfully engaging in their spiritual journey and things like that. So under the category of mission, one of the things that you and I have talked about is the difference between church driving mission for people and sort of creating events or programs that those people in our churches can like sign up for to do mission in the city or whatever, versus equipping them to know how to engage their neighbors or coworkers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that difference for you guys and how you think about that and even how that plays out?
Yeah. And like most things, that philosophy is in flux, right? When I was early on, I was like, I don't want the church to even be known in the community. I want everybody just to be plugged in at all their different places. And then as their friends and stuff interact with them, they're like, what, you go to that church too? Like, wow, I had no idea. You all go to that church. So that Jesus was what was percolating through the city, not an organization, a 501c3 nonprofit called Community Church of East Gloucester.
Yeah.
Over time, while I still want that to be the case, it's helpful to scaffold people to get them into that place of engaging with the city. So we've realized we need to have a couple of key partnerships.
Yeah.
So we partner with the Open Door, we partner with Amira, we partner with Action, so that we've got 2 or 3 organizations that we can do funnel people who are saying, I don't even know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even start getting involved in your city? Well, here, come with us. We're going to go help out and deliver some meals at the Open Door or whatever, to give people that flavor, to give people that taste that they might be like, oh. But part of that conversation is, so what are you passionate about? What are the gifts God's given you? It might not be at the Open, it might not be in any of these 3 limited places that the church is involved. We want to empower you to go find your thing. So like we have a group of 3 or 4 people who are like, we got this park downtown, Burnham's Field, and there are kids there all the time. We should run events there and like introduce people to Jesus and play with the kids of our city. We're like, go make it happen. Just go do it. And now there's a group that does that every Wednesday morning, not because the church was like, we're going to start a ministry, but because there's some people in the church who had a vision and that was based on their gifts. And we're like, how do we put wind in the sails of what the Spirit's doing for them without needing to like put a box around it and call it a church ministry?
That's great.
So that's kind of how I still want Jesus's name, not the church's name, to be what is percolating out through the city. But people have told me it's not a bad thing if the church has a good reputation in the city and is known to be helpful and a part of things. So I've mellowed on that a little bit.
That's great. So the kind of overarching theme of our conversation today seems to be about empowerment of everyday people and really equipping everyday people to do the work of ministry. One of the ways that is certainly not prescriptive for every pastor or every church, but one of the things that you've been really passionate about and intentional to build is a preaching team as a way to develop everyday people to do the work of ministry. Can you tell us about that? And
dangerous question.
It is. I know it's an area of passion for you. And your PhD is all around it. And also simplify that for us.
Sure.
Describe it for us and how does it work?
Okay. The most concise I can be. Grab a group of 8 to 10 people for a preaching series that might go 10 to 12 weeks. Every week we meet and we do 4 things. We evaluate the previous week's sermon. Whoever preached it, me or anyone else, what was good, what was bad. We have our rubric for how do we evaluate. Then we start working ahead. 3 weeks ahead of time, we're studying the text together to try and figure out what's a main preachable idea from this text. 2 weeks ahead of a sermon being preached, we're looking at a ruthless outline and saying, here's how I think I'm going to either explain or prove or apply that main idea. And then the week before, the preacher comes in saying, here's functionally a manuscript, as much of a manuscript as they have at that stage, so that we can help provide illustrations. And through that process, I run all my sermons through that process. When we do for the sort of the 2 big, maybe the 3 big series each year, we run this. It's a lot of work, so we don't run it 24/7. Okay. But that's the method. The mechanics so that you're actually getting not just feedback on a sermon after the fact when it's too late, but you get feed forward on a sermon. You gain the benefit of the life experiences of all the different people that you've collected into that room that are working together and praying through the text together. You can find out, what you're saying isn't clear at all, and you need to refine that outline, and you find that out ahead of time instead of when it's too late. So I started it when I was first in the lead role here back in 2005, because I just didn't think I was that good a preacher. I was like, help, I need people speaking into my life who are going to give me correction and guidance and make me better. And I keep doing it because over the years, we have identified other people who have the gift of teaching and preaching. And there's the connection to what we've been talking about, is how do we equip and empower people to use their gifts?
Yeah.
At Community Church, we see the pulpit is not the seat of governing authority. That's not where the lead pastor comes to lay his thing down. The pulpit is where the gift of teaching is employed for the edification of the church. So we include lay people among our preachers who have been equipped and trained through this preaching team process. And so not only does the church benefit from different people preaching, but even the non-preaching sort of discussion participants of that group are being equipped to handle God's word more effectively. So when they go to their small group, they handle the word better. And it's not just, well, how does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
But what does the text actually say? Those kinds of things that sort of percolate out. Our Sunday school teachers, our youth center leaders are all being equipped. And there's even a culture piece where you learn that it's okay to give and receive critical feedback, constructive feedback, not to be mean, but, well, to be mean nicely. And to say, that could have been better, and here's some things you could have. So next time, try doing something different. And that's not threatening to people, because we're trying to build a culture where that feedback is an expected part of just doing life together. We all want to improve. We all want to be more effective in communicating the gospel. So these teams that form for these 8 to 12 week periods of time kind of end up being a little microcosm of a ministry philosophy that we're seeing expand out through the whole church.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. So part of the preaching team are both staff and lay people. Mm-hmm. And some of them are giving feedback, and they're learning how to really engage with the word of God meaningfully. And some of them are being trained to teach and preach. Mm-hmm. We mentioned earlier that it's just way easier to do things ourselves. And so if you're being real about, like, the value behind it is there's value in developing people. But if we're honest as leaders, it's not all roses. So what's challenging about the commitment to develop people in the area of preaching? What's challenging about that?
There's a lot of challenges, and they're all good challenges, but they're just, that's what they are. They're challenges. Like, it just, I have to sit there in church saying I would have done that differently if I was preaching.
Yeah.
Personally. And it's not a criticism of who's preaching or what they're preaching. It's just, I would do things differently. And of course, I think I'd do it more effectively. So there's an active releasing of people into ministry to do things the way they are doing it, and whatever God's doing in that moment. If he can use a broken, messed up guy like me, he can use broken, messed up guy like them. Yeah. And just being okay with that is part of it. It's a lot more time and energy to walk with others through that process as they're building a sermon, and to try and guide them and shape their experience of that process. You've got to there's a challenge of having a tender heart with thick skin. So if you're getting feedback from your congregation and they say, that sermon sucked, that, people say, you work on a sermon for 3 weeks, it's like your baby, and then someone says your baby's ugly.
It's vulnerable.
Like, no, that's not okay to say that. So learning over the years how to handle, you're right, my baby was a little ugly, and it could have been a cuter baby if I just figured that out ahead of time. So being tenderhearted, still sensitive to what the Spirit's doing, but also have bulletproof skin so that when people do offer feedback that can be interpreted as hurtful or critical, you've got to be okay with that and value the larger goals of the process, not just the immediate, pats on the back. Wait, that wasn't a pat on the back. That was a punch in the nose. And so my own like journey towards, aspirationally towards humility and being okay with what God is doing. We still have people who it makes me sad, but they walk in the back door of the church on a Sunday and I see them and I greet them and they're like, "Are you preaching today?" And I'm like, no, one of our preaching team is. And they turn around and walk back out. That breaks my heart. They haven't figured out yet the ethos of what we're trying to do as a church, that it's not about who's got an A game. It's about who's growing into their gifting. And so makes me sad when I see that happen. We do not publish who's preaching ahead of time for that reason. Mm-hmm. So there's still that we love what the church is doing. We love all this philosophy, but could you just preach more? Mm-hmm. And having to really stick to my guns and say, I could, but that would actually undermine what we're trying to accomplish. And I love to preach and I love to be up there. I love God's word and I love making it accessible. And what I love more is the idea of a church that will far outlast me, because we've equipped a generation of people to handle God's word effectively and responsibly and powerfully to be able to communicate it to one another. So yeah, it's more work. It's you're right. It's not for everybody, and it's not even for us all the time. I need breaks from it. I can't do it all year round. It's exhausting, but it's worth it.
This has been such a great conversation around both the challenges and just the commitment to building a church that is growing and developing people into disciples, and then teaching and training them and equipping them to make new disciples as well. One of the things that Vision New England offers is a learning community cohort for churches to help them think deeply about the process of building this kind of culture. You guys are halfway through that 2-year process. Are there things that you can name so far that have felt helpful to your team? And how do you think something like the learning community cohort would be helpful for other churches in New England?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely helpful. I think from a programmatic standpoint, let me answer from that first. It provides like a common set of vocabulary for our team to use. The philosophy of our church pre getting involved with the discipleship stuff that you've been leading us through, there has been a synergy there. And a lot of the conversations that you guys have brought has been giving vocabulary to the impulses and the vibe that we have, but we don't have words to talk about it yet. And so that's been super helpful to give us common language, common vocabulary. And now we know how we can dialogue about these kinds of issues internally. One of the big things that you've been teaching us is the idea that we want to provide tools for discipleship, not a curriculum for discipleship. So a lot of the tools that we've been introduced for, that you end up with a toolbox, you open it up and say, what would work today based on this person or this individual or this circumstance or this context, rather than lesson 3, part 1.
Yes.
This is what we have to do because that's what the booklet says is next. So whether it's the Kairos circle or the invitation and challenge or the abide and fruit or the pendulum, the discipleship shapes. So from a programmatic standpoint, I know program's the bad word, but helpful in providing some of those tools. I think the other piece of it, I would say, even just from a personal perspective, man, it's nice to be poured into as a pastor. Mm-hmm. To have somebody come along and say, here's some new ideas, here's a new way of thinking about it. Go try this in your own life. There's a reignition of my own faith, of my own relationship with Jesus, when it's like, so go talk to your neighbor and invite them over for that drink you were talking about. And it's like, oh, you mean I could actually do, that's right. I can do these things too. And so being stretched to try and to grow, when I'm the one who's always telling people to stretch, try and grow, it's really healthy to have somebody putting me in that position of a learner again. And the other thing I'll just say is I don't have to be the expert in the room. How much do I love not having to be the expert in the room, that I'm one of the team and we're growing together, and watching my team grow and watching some of them try crazy, like, well, I feel the Lord said it, so I just tried it. And it's like, and seeing their faith come alive in new ways, because turns out God is still speaking.
Yeah.
And when we listen, crazy things happen. So
that's great.
That's been super exciting too.
That's great. If you're listening in and you're wanting more equipping to help you build a discipling culture in your church, we have several Leader Lab workshop days coming up both spring, winter, and fall, winter, and spring for pastors and church teams scattered all throughout New England. We're also going to be launching this 2-year cohort, a new round of the cohort this spring, for churches to learn how to build a discipling culture in their context. You can head over to visionnewengland.org and check out the Make Disciples resource page. If you're wanting practical tools and training to help you make disciples in your everyday life, we host monthly Disciple Maker digital workshops that are just for you. So again, check out the Make Disciples resource page at visionnewengland.org. Thanks for joining us for the Church in Action.
This program is created by Vision New England, which helps the church work in unity to make disciples, do justice, and share Jesus, to accelerate evangelism so that New England will be transformed. You can find additional resources and partner in our mission at visionnewengland.org. This program is brought to you by our friends at the Palau Association, who are dedicated to proclaiming the good news, uniting the church, and impacting cities worldwide. Join us next Sunday at 2 p.m. on Life Changing Radio. Thanks so much, and God bless you.
At Leadership Transformations, we believe that when you have the right resources to help you slow down and experience a deep and refreshing connection to God, you can become the discerning leader you know you are created to be. Friends, Steve Macchia here, and I have a free gift for your soul. It's called Pathways. Pathways is our weekly email aimed at offering you soul-nourishing content for the journey. It contains readings, prayers, spiritual practices, a link to the Discerning Leader podcast, as well as information about all of our upcoming soul care retreats, workshops, and online offerings. So head on over to leadershiptransformations.org today and sign up for this free resource. It will help you slow down and be more. God bless you, friends.